Most people who drive through the Appalachian Mountains only see what's on the surface: thick forests, quiet valleys, old wooden cabins, and tiny forgotten towns. But if you stay long enough, if you listen closely enough, you start to notice things that don't match the peaceful picture. Strange echoes that don't sound like animals. Lights that flicker deep between the trees where no one should be living. Footsteps on old logging roads long after midnight. Locals pretend not to notice, but their eyes always dart toward the ridgelines as if they're waiting for something to move. I never believed any of the rumors until the night I arrived in Briar Ridge, a fading Appalachian town tucked between two massive cliffs. I came to make a documentary about abandoned mining sites, nothing more. But within the first hour, I understood why people quietly warn outsiders to stay away from certain parts of the mountains. The air felt heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. Even during the day, a silence hung over the woods that didn't feel natural, as if the birds and insects were avoiding something they were too scared to disturb. The first person I met was an older man named Ellis. He sat on the porch of an old general store, rocking slowly as he watched the road. His white beard touched the collar of his jacket, and his eyes looked like they'd seen too much. I asked if he knew anything about the mining tunnels I was planning to film. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head the way someone shakes their head at a child running toward danger. "Those tunnels ain't your business," he said softly. "Not anymore." When I pressed him, he didn't explain. He only pointed to the mountains behind the town and whispered, "There's a war up there. A secret one. Best thing you can do is pretend you don't see it." I laughed it off at first. A war? In the middle of the Appalachian Mountains? It sounded like a wild local legend, the kind small towns create to scare tourists away or keep kids out of dangerous abandoned places. But the more I listened that afternoon, the more I realized people weren't joking. Every local I met had the same nervous energy. No one walked alone after dark. No one looked toward the peaks for more than a second. And when the sun started to set, the entire town seemed to shut down at once, as if following an unspoken rule. I decided to explore anyway. Just before sunset, I hiked up an old trail close to where the map said the mine entrance should be. The forest felt even quieter up there, like the trees were watching me move between them. Halfway up the trail, I found strange marks on the ground, deep grooves, almost like something heavy had been dragged through the mud recently. But there were no tire tracks, no footprints, nothing that told me what made them. Then I heard a low humming sound. At first I thought it was the wind pushing through the valley, but the pitch was too steady, too controlled. It sounded almost mechanical, but it wasn't coming from a single direction. It echoed off the trees, bouncing back and forth until it felt like the whole forest was vibrating. I pulled out my camera and hit record, whispering notes into the microphone. But before I could finish describing the sound, it stopped. Completely. Not even a breeze followed it. It just ended. That's when I saw the first light. A pale blue glow flashed deep within the trees, then disappeared. Another appeared a few seconds later on the opposite side of the trail. It wasn't the kind of light from a flashlight or a lantern. It was too soft, too cold, and it didn't cast shadows. Whatever it was, it felt wrong. Unnatural. I turned back down the trail, deciding I'd gone far enough for one night. But as I started walking, I noticed movement on the ridge. At first it looked like a person, but the figure was too tall, too thin, almost stretched. Its silhouette flickered for half a second, like a glitch in a video frame, before it slipped behind a cluster of trees near the old mine path. I froze. Maybe it was just the light playing tricks on me. Maybe I was letting the locals' warnings get inside my head. But something about the way it moved, quick, silent, too smooth, made my chest tighten. Suddenly, a hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun around and found a woman standing behind me. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail, backpack strapped tight to her chest. Her clothes were dirty, and her breathing was fast like she'd been running. "You need to get off this mountain," she said, voice low and urgent. "Right now." I tried to ask who she was, what I had just seen, and what she was doing alone in the woods at dusk. But she didn't answer any of it. Instead, she scanned the treeline the same way the locals had scanned the ridges, quick, nervous, expecting something to appear. "They're shifting positions," she whispered. "We don't have long." Before I could ask who they were, a sharp crack echoed through the valley. It wasn't a gunshot. It wasn't a tree branch snapping. It almost sounded like metal slamming against stone, followed by a strange vibrating hum that felt like it was coming from beneath the ground. The woman's grip tightened. "Move. Now." She pulled me down the trail with surprising strength. Branches whipped against my arms and camera strap as we stumbled through the dark. Behind us, the humming grew louder, not like a machine but like something waking up. When we reached the bottom of the trail, she finally let go. I stepped back, trying to catch my breath, but she still scanned the forest like we were being watched. "I wasn't supposed to talk to you," she said. "They're careful about outsiders." Her voice cracked for the first time. "But you walking up here alone, you would have been taken." I swallowed hard. "Taken by who?" She looked at me with wide, tired eyes, hesitating like the truth itself was dangerous to speak out loud. "There's a war happening in these mountains," she said quietly. "A secret one. And if you're not careful, you're about to get caught right in the middle of it." Before I could respond, another sound echoed through the trees, closer this time, deeper, like something massive shifting its weight. The woman's eyes widened. "They found us." And just like that, the forest lights came back, this time brighter, moving fast toward us through the trees. The lights moved between the trees in quick, smooth lines, almost like they were scanning the forest. They weren't bright enough to light up the whole area, but they were strong enough to catch on the edges of branches and wet moss, making everything shimmer in a cold blue glow. The woman pulled me behind a fallen log as the humming sound grew deeper, vibrating through the ground like something heavy was moving beneath the soil. I tried to steady my breathing, but she pressed a finger to her lips, signaling me to stay completely still. The forest was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. A thin beam of blue light passed across the log we were hiding behind. It stopped for a moment, almost as if it sensed us. Then, just when I thought it was going to rise over the log and reveal whatever was controlling it, the light suddenly zipped away in a straight line and vanished behind a cluster of trees. The woman exhaled shakily. "They're searching. We don't have much time." I whispered back, "Who exactly are you talking about? What are those lights?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she kept her eyes fixed on the dark trees. Finally, she said, "You saw the tracks on the trail, didn't you? The grooves in the mud." I nodded. "They weren't made by animals." "And the lights?" "They're not from any camera, drones, or equipment you've seen before. They're something else." She swallowed hard. "They've been around for years, and the people in this region have been dealing with them long before you ever arrived." I wanted to ask 100 questions, but she motioned for me to follow her. We moved fast but carefully, weaving through the brush, taking paths that weren't marked on any map. She seemed to know every rock, every fallen branch, every bend in the land. After a few minutes, the humming faded into the distance. The lights disappeared completely. Only then did she slow down, letting me catch my breath. "You still haven't told me your name," I said. "It's Mara," she replied, glancing over her shoulder. "And before you ask, I'm not from Briar Ridge. Not originally." We reached a narrow stream where the water moved quietly over smooth stones. Mara crouched down and splashed her face with cold water, like she needed a moment to steady herself. I stood nearby, looking around, expecting the lights to reappear at any second. "Mara," I said softly, "what did you mean when you said I would have been taken?" She sighed and sat on one of the large rocks at the water's edge. Her shoulders dropped a little, like carrying the weight of the story was almost as heavy as the danger surrounding it. "You're not the first outsider to come here," she began. "People show up with cameras, notebooks, maps just like you. They hear rumors about old mines, strange wildlife, odd lights. They want to explore, investigate, document. But they don't know the real reason the locals avoid the deeper trails." "What's the real reason?" She looked at me, tired and serious. "Some never come back." A chill ran down my spine. "Are you saying people disappear up here?" "They do. Quietly. No big news stories. No huge search parties. The families don't talk about it. The town doesn't talk about it." She paused. "Because they know something's happening in those mountains. Something that doesn't want attention." I felt my mouth go dry. "And you know what that something is?" Her eyes drifted toward the ridge line, barely visible in the dim light. "I know enough. Enough to understand that what's happening isn't one thing, it's several. Different groups, different objectives. And all of them are hiding from each other. That's why I called it a war. It's not a traditional fight, but it's a conflict. One that's been escalating over the years." The more she talked, the more I realized her story wasn't wild or exaggerated. She spoke like someone who had seen too much and was still trying to make sense of it. "Why are you involved?" I asked. For a moment, she hesitated, like the question hit a wound she hadn't healed from. Then she whispered, "Because I lost someone up here." I didn't speak. I didn't push. I just waited, giving her space. "My brother," she finally said. 3 years ago he came here to study the abandoned mining systems. He was smart enough to be cautious. But one night he went up near the North Ridge, the same area you were walking toward today." She looked away. "He never came back. I felt a knot form in my chest. Did they ever find anything? His things? His gear? Nothing. No tracks, no disturbed soil, no broken branches. It was like he vanished into thin air. Her voice tightened. And the locals, they weren't surprised. They were sad but not surprised. I sat next to her trying to process everything. So you came back to find him? At first, yes, she said. But the deeper I went, the more I realized someone, or something, didn't want him found. Or anyone else who went looking. She paused as the wind rustled through the leaves. For a moment, we both listened carefully, unsure if the sound was natural or not. Why didn't you leave? I asked quietly. Because if I left, the truth would stay buried. And I can't accept that. She stood and tightened her backpack straps. And now you've seen enough that you can't just walk away either. I didn't plan on getting involved in anything dangerous, I said. I was just making a documentary. Mara gave me a soft, almost sad smile. Trust me. These mountains decide when you're involved. Not you. We began walking toward a lower part of the forest where the trees grew thicker and the air smelled damp, almost metallic. Mara moved confidently, but I could feel her tension. She kept glancing over her shoulder, listening for the hum of the lights. How long has this war been going on? I asked. It depends on who you ask, she said. Some locals say it started back in the mining days when strange things were found underground. Others believe it's been going on since long before people settled here. And some think it's tied to secret operations that were never recorded. As in government operations? I asked carefully. She didn't confirm or deny it. As in things that were never meant to be seen. Projects that never made it into official reports. Experiments that were abandoned but not forgotten. Her voice lowered even more. And certain groups, they're still up here. Hidden. Active. A twig snapped somewhere behind us. We both froze. Mara held up a hand, signaling me not to move. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the forest. Another snap. This one closer. It wasn't the lights this time. Whatever made that sound was heavier, slower. Stay quiet, she whispered. The bushes ahead rustled, and for a moment I thought we were about to come face to face with one of the figures from the ridge. The air felt tight, like the forest itself stopped breathing again. But the noise faded. The forest settled. Mara let out a slow breath. We're not alone out here. And we won't be alone again. We walked for several minutes until the trees opened into a small clearing. The moonlight broke through the branches, shining faintly on the old remains of a wooden staircase leading down into a narrow, dark crevice. What is this place? I asked. Mara pulled a small flashlight from her pack but didn't turn it on. This used to be one of the entrances to the lower tunnels. Not the tourist ones, the real ones. The ones miners weren't supposed to talk about. She pointed toward the darkness. This is where the war started. I stared at the gap in the earth, feeling cold air drift out from the darkness like a slow exhale. And if we go down there, she added, you'll understand why no one in Briar Ridge speaks about what they've seen. A distant humming sound rose again, soft but unmistakable. This time it was coming from directly behind us. Mara stiffened. They followed us. The humming grew louder, rising through the trees like something sweeping low over the forest floor. Mara didn't waste a second. She grabbed my arm and pulled me away from the crevice, moving fast but silently as she guided us along a narrow path hidden behind tangled vines. Every few steps she paused, listening, her eyes fixed on the shifting shadows. The sound didn't follow a steady pattern. It would swell, drop suddenly, then pulse in short bursts, almost like whoever, or whatever, was tracking us was communicating in a way we couldn't understand. The air felt charged, like static building right before a storm. Even the leaves on the ground seemed to react, trembling slightly with each hum. We reached a cluster of fallen trees where the ground dipped, creating a natural shelter. Mara crouched low and pulled me down beside her. She pointed to a gap in the branches just big enough to see through. Don't move, she whispered. I pressed my eye to the gap. A faint blue light drifted between the trunks, slow at first, then circling the clearing like it was mapping the area. It moved too fluidly to be any kind of drone I'd seen. And the forest around it seemed to respond. The air went still, the temperature dropped, and even the insects fell silent. Then, out of nowhere, a second light appeared from the opposite side of the clearing. 2 of them. They hovered at eye level before rising higher, scanning the treetops as if searching for something that might be hiding above. For a second I thought they were going to come straight toward us, but instead they suddenly zipped upward and vanished into the canopy without a single rustle of leaves. Mara let out a shaky breath. They're patrolling more aggressively than usual. Why? I whispered. What changed? She didn't answer immediately. She looked troubled, almost like she realized something she hadn't expected. It might be because you're here, she said. Outsiders attract attention. But this is more than just surveillance. I felt my stomach twist. What do you mean more? They're tracking something. She paused. Or someone. Before I could respond, a distant echo rolled through the forest. It was low, heavy, like metal shifting inside the mountains. This sound was different from the humming. It felt older, deeper. Almost like the ground itself was reacting. Mara's expression tightened. We need to move. The tunnels are safer than the open woods right now. I almost laughed from disbelief. Going underground sounds safer? In these mountains, she said. Sometimes yes. We moved toward the crevice again, but instead of approaching the old staircase, Mara led me along the ridge until we reached a narrow break in the rock face. It looked like nothing more than a shadow at first, but up close I could see the outline of a small passage, wide enough for a person to slip through. She crouched and pulled out a thin coil of rope from her pack. Hold on to this. The ground drops a few feet inside. I followed her into the darkness. The temperature dropped instantly. The air smelled of damp earth and old wood. My fingers brushed along the stone walls as I lowered myself down, and I could feel grooves carved into the rock, too even and straight to be natural. Mara clicked on her flashlight, aiming it low to avoid exposing us to anything outside. The beam shone on an old wooden support beam, cracked but still holding. Rusted metal rails ran along the ground, disappearing into a long, narrow tunnel. This was one of the transport lines, she explained quietly. Miners used these to move equipment. And now no one talks about them. Not publicly. We walked deeper until the light from the entrance faded. The hum from outside was muffled now, but not gone. It traveled faintly through the stone like vibration more than sound. As the tunnel widened, Mara stopped and motioned toward the wall. Faint markings were scratched into the stone, symbols, shapes, lines that didn't make sense at first glance. My brother found these before he disappeared, she said. He thought they were warnings left behind by miners. Warnings about what? She traced one symbol with her finger. He thought the miners found something down here. Something that didn't belong. Before I could ask what she meant, a sudden metallic clang echoed through the tunnel. Not far. Not deep. Close enough that dust fell from the beams overhead. I stiffened. Is someone else down here? Mara shook her head. Not someone. She aimed her flashlight toward the darkness. The beam caught on something low to the ground, small, metallic, half buried in dirt and rust. She knelt and brushed some of the dust away, revealing a round metal device no bigger than her hand. It wasn't modern. But it wasn't old mining equipment either. I've seen these before, she said. Not in the mines. Above ground. Near the restricted zones. What is it? I asked. Trackers, she whispered. They're not active anymore, but if these were placed down here. Her voice trailed off. I felt the tension build between us as the possibilities settled in. You mean the people involved in this war, they've been in the tunnels too? She nodded slowly. Different sides use different parts of the mountains. Some stay on the ridges. Some use the old mines. And some, her voice tightened. Some stay underneath. I swallowed hard. You mean underground groups? Not groups like you're thinking, she said. Not organizations. More like factions. With different objectives. Different knowledge of what's buried here. And they're fighting each other? Yes, she said softly. And lately it's been getting worse. A distant rumble shook the ground slightly. Not long. Not violent. But enough to make the old rails vibrate. Mara jumped to her feet. That wasn't natural. The rumble repeated, this time sharper, almost like an impact. Are they collapsing tunnels? I asked nervously. Maybe, she said. Or maybe something else is moving down here. Something else. The phrase echoed in my mind like a warning bell. We walked quickly deeper into the tunnel system. The walls opened into a wider chamber where beams of moonlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling. An old mining cart lay overturned, half swallowed by the earth. Broken lanterns, rusted tools, and scraps of forgotten equipment littered the ground. It felt like stepping into a frozen moment in time, like the miners dropped everything and left in a hurry. What happened here? I asked quietly. Mara swept her flashlight across the room. My brother thought this was one of the first sites where things started going wrong. He said the miners reported strange vibrations, odd lights underground, and people hearing voices in the walls. I felt a shiver run through me. Voices. Not like human voices, she said. More like whispers or tones. But the miners didn't stay long enough to understand it. I stared at the cracks in the rock above us. The beams of moonlight looked thin, fragile. What do you think caused it? I asked. Mara hesitated. I think something was uncovered down here. Something no one expected. And instead of sealing it off, certain groups came to learn more. And now they're fighting over it, I said slowly. She nodded. The humming sound suddenly returned, faint at first, then rising from somewhere behind us in the tunnel. Mara's face went pale. They're coming into the tunnels. But I thought they stayed above ground? Not anymore, she whispered. We turned to run, but a different sound echoed from the opposite side of the chamber, a low, rhythmic tapping, steady and deliberate. I stopped. Mara, what is that? She grabbed my wrist tightly, her voice barely a breath. That's not them. The tapping grew louder, closer, coming from a tunnel that hadn't seen human footprints in decades. Something else was in here with us. And whatever it wasn't hiding anymore. The tapping grew steadier, almost rhythmic, like someone knocking on hollow metal deep inside the tunnel. But the sound didn't echo the way footsteps would, it pulsed, almost like it was signaling. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Mara grabbed my sleeve and pulled me behind a row of old support beams, crouching low as she turned off her flashlight. The sudden darkness wrapped around us so tightly it felt like a physical weight. The tapping stopped. Silence filled the chamber, heavy and thick. Then the humming returned, louder now, bouncing off the stone walls. The blue glow reappeared in the far passage we had come through, spilling across the abandoned rails like a slow-moving fog. They're closing in from both sides, Mara whispered. Her voice wasn't trembling, but the tightness in it told me she was terrified. I was too. Something was moving in the dark tunnel ahead, something that wasn't using light, something that tapped instead of hummed. And now the blue-lit patrols were coming from behind us. We have to move, I whispered. If we run into whatever is tapping. She didn't finish and she didn't need to. The tapping resumed, but now it was closer. A soft scrape followed, like something dragging across stone. Mara slowly reached into her pack and pulled out a small handheld device, an old radio scanner with chipped edges. She switched it on and faint static crackled through the speaker. For a moment there was nothing but noise. Then a distorted tone came through, low and uneven. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't human. It almost sounded like the humming above ground, but broken, as if echoing from far deeper underground. What is that? I breathed. Interference, she whispered. They use signals to navigate. But whatever's tapping, it reacts to the signals. The tapping grew louder, faster, almost impatient. Okay, we're going, she whispered sharply. She grabbed my arm and slipped into a narrow side tunnel barely tall enough to crawl through. I followed her on hands and knees, careful not to make noise. The stones scraped my elbows and knees, and the air smelled like wet earth and old metal. Behind us, the chamber filled with the soft hum of the blue-lit patrols. Their glow seeped into the passage, dim but unmistakable. Mara hissed, "Keep moving, don't stop." We crawled for what felt like forever until the tunnel widened enough for us to stand. The air was cooler here, fresher. A faint breeze drifted from somewhere ahead, carrying the smell of pine and night air. We're close to another exit, Mara whispered. If we can get above ground, we can lose them. Just as she said it, the tunnel shook with a sudden jolt, like something massive had slammed into the rock. Dust rained from the ceiling. I pressed against the wall, bracing myself. Another impact followed, then another, each one closer. What is that? I whispered. Mara's eyes darted toward the darkness behind us. That's not them. That's something deeper. The impact stopped abruptly, replaced by a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. It sounded like a distant growl, slow, long, almost like the mountains were breathing. Mara swallowed hard. We need to move. Now. We ran deeper into the tunnel. Our footsteps echoed off the stone, mixing with the rumble. The passage forked ahead, one path sloping downward, the other twisting up toward a faint glimmer of moonlight. Mara pointed upward. That way, come on. We climbed quickly and the rumble slowly faded behind us. Just as we reached the top of the passage, the ground trembled again. Something big was moving somewhere below. Something that didn't sound like machines. Something that didn't sound human either. We stepped out into the open air, emerging onto a rocky ledge halfway up the mountain. The forest below stretched into darkness, but the moon lit the tops of the trees in a silver glow. For a moment I thought we were safe. Then I looked up. 3 blue lights glided silently above the treetops, moving in a perfect formation. They weren't scanning, they were searching with purpose now, almost like they knew exactly where we would surface. Mara grabbed my hand. "We're not staying out here." She pulled me toward a narrow trail hugging the mountainside. The wind was sharp here, whistling through the rocks. Every few steps I looked back, expecting the lights to shift toward us. They didn't, not yet. But they hovered in the same area, scanning the forest below with precise, sweeping motions. As we moved, the trail opened into a broader ridge. From here I could see the massive valley stretching between the mountains. Pockets of blue light blinked in different areas, some near the tree line, some near old mine shafts. It was like watching a silent battlefield play out in slow motion. "Mara," I whispered, "how many of these things are there?" "More than you want to know," she said. "And more than the locals will ever admit." "Why would they be out in the open like this?" "They're not out in the open," she said. "They're positioned. They're responding to something." As if on cue, another low rumble rolled through the valley. This time it wasn't underground, it echoed across the mountains like distant thunder. Mara's face paled. "They're reacting to whatever woke up down there." I swallowed hard. "The tapping?" "Yes. And something else. Something bigger." We continued along the ridge until the trail dipped into a cluster of old pine trees. Mara checked the scanner again. More static. More distorted tones. Then a faint burst of sound, short, sharp, almost like a coded message. Mara stopped walking. "That's not them. That's a human signal." "A person?" I whispered. "Someone else is out here?" She nodded slowly. "Someone sending a warning." The signal repeated, 3 sharp bursts, then silence. "What does it mean?" I asked. "It's an old distress pattern miners used," she said. "It means unsafe ground. It means the tunnels are unstable. But we were just down there. And something was moving," she reminded me. The ground behind us shook again, harder this time. Birds exploded out of the trees in a frantic burst, their wings beating aggressively as they scattered into the night. Mara grabbed my wrist. "We're not staying here." We ran down the trail. The trees thickened, swallowing us in shadows. The hum of the blue lights faded behind us, but the tremors didn't. They were getting stronger, more frequent. Every few seconds the earth shuddered like something enormous was shifting its weight inside the mountain. "Whatever is waking up," Mara whispered breathlessly, "it's the reason the factions started fighting. It's the reason people disappeared. It's the reason these mountains are dangerous." I stumbled over a root but caught myself. "Then what is it?" She looked at me with fear so real it froze my breath. "The thing my brother went looking for." Before I could respond, a blinding flash of blue light ignited the trees ahead of us, followed by a sudden, explosive hum that shook the branches. Mara grabbed me and pulled me behind a boulder just as the light expanded like a silent wave. The mountains fell into absolute silence. Then, footsteps echoed in the darkness behind us. Not tapping. Not humming. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Getting closer. The tapping grew steadier, almost rhythmic, like someone knocking on hollow metal deep inside the tunnel. But the sound didn't echo the way footsteps would. It pulsed, almost like it was signaling. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Mara grabbed my sleeve and pulled me behind a row of old support beams, crouching low as she turned off her flashlight. The sudden darkness wrapped around us so tightly it felt like a physical weight. The tapping stopped. Silence filled the chamber, heavy and thick. Then the humming returned, louder now, bouncing off the stone walls. The blue glow reappeared in the far passage we had come through, spilling across the abandoned rails like a slow-moving fog. "They're closing in from both sides," Mara whispered. Her voice wasn't trembling, but the tightness in it told me she was terrified. I was too. Something was moving in the dark tunnel ahead, something that wasn't using light, something that tapped instead of hummed. And now the blue-lit patrols were coming from behind us. "We have to move," I whispered. "If we run into whatever is tapping." She didn't finish and she didn't need to. The tapping resumed, but now it was closer. A soft scrape followed, like something dragging across stone. Mara slowly reached into her pack and pulled out a small handheld device, an old radio scanner with chipped edges. She switched it on and faint static crackled through the speaker. For a moment there was nothing but noise. Then a distorted tone came through, low and uneven. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't human. It almost sounded like the humming above ground, but broken, as if echoing from far deeper underground. "What is that?" I breathed. "Interference," she whispered. "They use signals to navigate. But whatever's tapping, it reacts to the signals." The tapping grew louder, faster, almost impatient. "Okay, we're going," she whispered sharply. She grabbed my arm and slipped into a narrow side tunnel barely tall enough to crawl through. I followed her on hands and knees, careful not to make noise. The stones scraped my elbows and knees, and the air smelled like wet earth and old metal. Behind us, the chamber filled with the soft hum of the blue-lit patrols. Their glow seeped into the passage, dim but unmistakable. Mara hissed, "Keep moving, don't stop." We crawled for what felt like forever until the tunnel widened enough for us to stand. The air was cooler here, fresher. A faint breeze drifted from somewhere ahead, carrying the smell of pine and night air. "We're close to another exit," Mara whispered. "If we can get above ground, we can lose them." Just as she said it, the tunnel shook with a sudden jolt, like something massive had slammed into the rock. Dust rained from the ceiling. I pressed against the wall, bracing myself. Another impact followed, then another, each one closer. "What is that?" I whispered. Mara's eyes darted toward the darkness behind us. "That's not them. That's something deeper." The impact stopped abruptly, replaced by a low rumble that vibrated through the floor. It sounded like a distant growl, slow, long, almost like the mountains were breathing. Mara swallowed hard. "We need to move. Now." We ran deeper into the tunnel. Our footsteps echoed off the stone, mixing with the rumble. The passage forked ahead, one path sloping downward, the other twisting up toward a faint glimmer of moonlight. Mara pointed upward. "That way, come on." We climbed quickly and the rumble slowly faded behind us. Just as we reached the top of the passage, the ground trembled again. Something big was moving somewhere below. Something that didn't sound like machines. Something that didn't sound human either. We stepped out into the open air, emerging onto a rocky ledge halfway up the mountain. The forest below stretched into darkness, but the moon lit the tops of the trees in a silver glow. For a moment I thought we were safe. Then I looked up. 3 blue lights glided silently above the treetops, moving in a perfect formation. They weren't scanning, they were searching with purpose now, almost like they knew exactly where we would surface. Mara grabbed my hand. "We're not staying out here." She pulled me toward a narrow trail hugging the mountainside. The wind was sharp here, whistling through the rocks. Every few steps I looked back, expecting the lights to shift toward us. They didn't, not yet. But they hovered in the same area, scanning the forest below with precise, sweeping motions. As we moved, the trail opened into a broader ridge. From here I could see the massive valley stretching between the mountains. Pockets of blue light blinked in different areas, some near the tree line, some near old mine shafts. It was like watching a silent battlefield play out in slow motion. "Mara," I whispered, "how many of these things are there?" "More than you want to know," she said. "And more than the locals will ever admit." "Why would they be out in the open like this?" "They're not out in the open," she said. "They're positioned. They're responding to something." As if on cue, another low rumble rolled through the valley. This time it wasn't underground, it echoed across the mountains like distant thunder. Mara's face paled. "They're reacting to whatever woke up down there." I swallowed hard. "The tapping?" "Yes. And something else. Something bigger." We continued along the ridge until the trail dipped into a cluster of old pine trees. Mara checked the scanner again. More static. More distorted tones. Then a faint burst of sound, short, sharp, almost like a coded message. Mara stopped walking. "That's not them. That's a human signal." "A person?" I whispered. "Someone else is out here?" She nodded slowly. "Someone sending a warning." The signal repeated, 3 sharp bursts, then silence. "What does it mean?" I asked. "It's an old distress pattern miners used," she said. "It means unsafe ground. It means the tunnels are unstable. But we were just down there. And something was moving," she reminded me. The ground behind us shook again, harder this time. Birds exploded out of the trees in a frantic burst, their wings beating aggressively as they scattered into the night. Mara grabbed my wrist. "We're not staying here." We ran down the trail. The trees thickened, swallowing us in shadows. The hum of the blue lights faded behind us, but the tremors didn't. They were getting stronger, more frequent. Every few seconds the earth shuddered like something enormous was shifting its weight inside the mountain. "Whatever is waking up," Mara whispered breathlessly, "it's the reason the factions started fighting. It's the reason people disappeared. It's the reason these mountains are dangerous." I stumbled over a root but caught myself. "Then what is it?" She looked at me with fear so real it froze my breath. "The thing my brother went looking for." Before I could respond, a blinding flash of blue light ignited the trees ahead of us, followed by a sudden, explosive hum that shook the branches. Mara grabbed me and pulled me behind a boulder just as the light expanded like a silent wave. The mountains fell into absolute silence. Then, footsteps echoed in the darkness behind us. Not tapping. Not humming. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Getting closer. The cold wind cut through the trees as Sam and Mia hurried along the narrow path, each of them glancing back every few seconds. The forest felt different tonight, heavier somehow, as if it was holding its breath with them. The quiet was too deep, too perfect, and that alone made every step feel dangerous. They didn't dare speak at first, afraid their voices might stir something they weren't ready to face, but the weight of everything they had discovered pressed hard on them. After a minute, Mia finally whispered that they should slow down. Her voice shook slightly even though she tried to hide it. Sam could see the way her hands trembled, the way her eyes kept drifting toward the shadows between the trees. He felt the same unease crawling up his arms, but he tried to stay focused. They had come too far to turn back now. Sam pulled out the folded page they found earlier, the one with the strange sketch and the warning scribbled across the bottom. The symbols still didn't make sense, but the lines looked rushed, almost desperate. He tried to match them with the marks carved on the old cabin door they passed, but something didn't line up. It was like someone wanted them to believe one thing while hiding something else just beneath it. That thought alone made his stomach tighten. Mia said she kept thinking about the person they heard running earlier. Whoever it was moved fast, too fast for someone trying to stay quiet. She wondered if it was the same figure they saw by the lake or someone completely different. Sam didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. The uncertainty made everything worse. There were too many pieces, but none of them fit cleanly, and the deeper they went into this mystery, the more it felt like somebody was watching how they reacted to each clue. As they reached a small clearing, the air seemed to shift. The wind eased, the branches stopped shaking, and even the distant sounds disappeared. The sudden stillness made Mia stop in her tracks. She whispered Sam's name, and before he could ask why, she pointed toward the far side of the clearing. A single lantern sat on a tree stump, its soft glow flickering like someone had just placed it there moments ago. Sam's chest tightened. They hadn't seen any sign of other people in this part of the woods, not since everything started. The last thing they expected was a lantern waiting for them like an invitation, or a warning. Sam approached slowly, each step crunching softly on the dry leaves. Mia followed close behind, her hands gripping the straps of her backpack. The lantern was warm when Sam touched it. Freshly lit. And right beside it lay another folded note, this one marked with the same symbol from before. But this time the lines were cleaner, more controlled, as if two different people had drawn them for two different reasons. Something wasn't adding up, and that confusion started to twist into a new kind of fear. Mia nudged Sam to open it. The message inside wasn't long, but it felt heavier than the words on the page. It said they weren't supposed to trust the clues from earlier. Someone had been tampering with the truth, shifting things around to throw them off, pushing them toward the wrong answers on purpose. The note didn't say who was behind it. It only said that the real danger wasn't coming from the person they had been trying to avoid, but from someone they hadn't noticed yet. Mia looked around again, her breathing speeding up. She whispered that maybe they'd been following the wrong trail since the beginning. Maybe the person they were afraid of wasn't the one causing everything. Sam tried to calm her, but then he saw it too, a faint trail of footprints leading away from the stump, pressed sharply into the dirt. The shape of the prints made his pulse jump. They weren't the same as the ones they followed earlier. These were smaller, lighter, almost careful. He crouched down to study them, but the moment he touched the ground, a louder sound broke through the silence, branches snapping somewhere behind them. Mia spun around instantly, gripping Sam's arm. The sound wasn't random. It was steady, like someone walking slowly and deliberately. Not rushing. Not hiding. Coming straight toward them with complete confidence. Sam whispered that they should move, but before they could, a second sound echoed from the opposite direction. Another set of footsteps. Slower, heavier, almost dragging. Sam's heart pounded as he realized they were caught between two different people. And neither one felt like the figure they saw before. This wasn't just one mystery anymore. It was turning into something layered, intentional, and much more dangerous. The tension grew so thick that Mia's voice cracked when she asked what they should do. Sam looked around, trying to find an escape route, but every direction seemed risky. And then something unexpected happened. The lantern beside them flickered violently and went out. The sudden darkness made both of them gasp. Sam grabbed Mia's wrist instinctively, pulling her close as the forest swallowed the remaining light. But even in the darkness, one thing was clear. They weren't alone anymore. A faint whisper drifted through the trees. Not a voice they recognized. Not a warning. Something else. something meant only for them. Sam felt Mia's grip tighten as the whisper came again, this time closer, clearer, and carrying a message that made the air turn cold. They had been followed long before they thought the mystery even began. And the real reason behind everything, the clues, the symbols, the strange figure, wasn't what they believed at all. The footsteps stopped. The woods fell silent again. And just as Sam tried to call out, another sound cut through the night, something that changed everything they thought they knew and sent the story hurtling toward its most dangerous point yet. Sam held Mia close as the forest fell completely silent again. The darkness around them felt alive, pressing in from every side. His heartbeat was loud enough that he wondered if whoever was out there could hear it. The only thing he knew for sure was that everything had changed. The clues, the strange symbols, the figure by the lake. None of it was random. Someone had been guiding them, watching them, and now the moment had finally arrived. The footsteps returned, this time from only one direction. Slow, steady, and confident. Sam felt Mia's breath shaking against his shoulder. He whispered that they should stay calm even though his hands were trembling. Then a soft glow appeared between the trees, revealing a familiar face stepping into the clearing. It was the old caretaker from the cabin, the one they thought had vanished days ago. His lantern lit up the center of the clearing, casting long shadows behind him. He didn't look dangerous, but there was something in his eyes that made Sam uneasy. The caretaker said he had been waiting for them to reach this point, that everything they had found was leading them toward the truth they were finally ready to hear. Mia stepped forward, confused, asking why he'd been following them. The caretaker sighed as if the weight of the truth had been sitting on him for years. He explained that the strange marks carved around the forest didn't belong to the person they were afraid of. They were his symbols, warnings to keep people away from the deeper parts of the woods. He had seen things here long before Sam and Mia arrived, things he tried to keep others safe from. And when he saw them wandering closer to the truth, he tried to leave clues that would push them back. But someone else had started interfering, altering the warnings, twisting them into traps. Before Sam could ask who, the caretaker lifted his lantern higher. Another shadow moved behind him, stepping into the light. It was the woman from the photograph they found, someone they believed disappeared years ago. Mia's eyes widened. The woman explained that she had never disappeared. She had been hiding, trying to stop the one responsible for the chaos. Someone had turned the forest into a maze of fear and confusion, using misleading clues to control anyone who entered it. She said Sam and Mia were never meant to be part of it, but once they found the first symbol they became tangled in everything. Sam asked who was behind all of it. The woman exchanged a heavy look with the caretaker before answering. She said it wasn't one person, it was two. Two people working separately but using the same signs and trails for different reasons. One of them wanted to protect the woods, the other wanted to draw people deeper until they were lost. And that second person was much closer than Sam expected. Branches snapped behind them again, but this time Sam and Mia didn't feel fear, just a strange sense of clarity. The figure stepped into the clearing and Sam recognized the shape instantly. It was the same silhouette they saw by the lake on the first night. But when the lantern light reached the figure's face, Sam froze. It was Liam, Sam's childhood friend, the one who had insisted on leaving the group earlier in the week. The one they thought had gone back to town. His expression wasn't angry or wild. It was calm. Too calm. Liam said he didn't mean for things to get out of hand. He only wanted to prove something, that he could uncover the truth behind the forest legends before anyone else. He admitted he tampered with the caretaker's warnings, rearranged clues, and even followed Sam and Mia to see how far they would go. But he didn't expect them to get caught between his actions and the dangers already hidden here. He didn't expect the woman from the photograph to still be alive. And he definitely didn't expect Sam to find the final note meant for him alone. Sam felt a mixture of anger and sadness rising inside him. He asked Liam why he didn't just tell the truth from the beginning. Liam didn't answer. Instead, he said something strange, that the forest reveals its secrets only when someone gets close enough to break its balance. And Sam and Mia had done exactly that. Before Sam could react, the ground beneath them rumbled softly, like the earth itself was shifting. The lantern dimmed, the trees groaned, and a strange energy filled the clearing. Mia grabbed Sam's arm again, terrified but holding on. The caretaker shouted that the symbols were meant to keep this from happening, that Liam's interference had weakened everything. The woman hurried to the edge of the clearing and told Sam and Mia to stay behind her. She held her hand over one of the symbols carved into the tree bark, whispering something Sam couldn't hear. Slowly the trembling began to fade. The lantern brightened. The air became still again. But Liam had already slipped back into the shadows, disappearing as quietly as he first appeared. The caretaker shook his head, saying Liam knew more than he should, and this wouldn't be the last time he tried something reckless. Sam didn't know how to feel. The person he once trusted had nearly pulled them into something far worse than a mystery. Mia exhaled, exhausted but relieved as the tension finally began to ease. The woman promised they were safe now, and that she'd stay with the caretaker to guard the forest properly again. She told Sam and Mia to leave by dawn and not return at night under any circumstances. As they made their way back toward the trail, the sky began to lighten, turning a soft blue. Sam felt Mia's hand slip into his, warm and steady. They didn't speak for a long time, both trying to process everything. The forest behind them felt calmer, as if the pressure around it had finally released. But as they reached the road leading out, Sam noticed something half buried in the dirt. A small wooden charm, carved with the same symbol they had been following. He picked it up, expecting it to feel cold. But it felt warm, freshly handled. Mia asked if he was okay, and Sam nodded slowly, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Because on the back of the charm, etched lightly into the wood, was a message. It was Liam's handwriting. Not done yet. And suddenly Sam realized the story wasn't over, not completely. The main conflict was resolved, but Liam's twist left a shadow behind them, hinting that the real mystery might just be beginning. Sam turned the wooden charm over in his hand again, the soft morning light catching the carved symbol. The forest behind them looked calm and ordinary now, almost peaceful, and for a moment he wondered if the whole night had just been a strange dream. But the charm made it real. Liam's message made it real. Still, Sam knew he couldn't turn back. Not anymore. After everything they had seen, the only thing that mattered now was getting away from the Appalachian woods before they found themselves tangled in another secret they weren't ready for. Mia touched his arm gently and said they should keep moving. Her voice was soft but steady, like she'd finally found her center again after everything. They walked down the dirt road toward their car, listening to the sound of birds waking up across the mountains. It felt surreal, going from fear and mystery to the quiet morning breeze, but it was exactly what they needed. Sam kept the charm in his pocket, unsure if he should hold onto it or throw it as far as he could. In the end he kept it. He didn't understand why, but he felt like it wasn't just a warning. It was a reminder to stay aware, to stay grounded, and to remember that not every mystery is meant to be solved all at once. When they reached the car, Mia finally exhaled deeply, like she had been holding everything inside the whole time. She leaned against the door and took a moment to look back at the mountains. She said the forest didn't feel evil to her, it felt misunderstood. Like something was trying to protect itself from people who pushed too far. Sam understood. He felt the same way. The Appalachian Mountains always had stories. Legends. Strange sightings. Whispers passed down for generations. But now he realized something important. Not all of those stories were meant for everyone. They got into the car and drove slowly down the narrow road, the trees thinning until the mountains became smaller in the rearview mirror. For a long stretch, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Silence was part of the healing. Eventually, Mia broke the quiet and asked Sam if he thought Liam would ever come back to town. Sam wasn't sure. Liam had always been curious, always pushing boundaries, always trying to prove something. He wasn't dangerous, not intentionally, but curiosity can become its own kind of danger when it's mixed with pride. Sam told Mia that Liam would probably return once he figured out what he was really looking for. Whether that was answers in the forest or something inside himself. As the road smoothed out and civilization came back into view, coffee shops, sleepy neighborhoods, old wooden fences, Sam felt like he was stepping back into a life that had been paused. Everything looked the same, but he wasn't. They weren't. The secret war happening in the Appalachian Mountains had changed them. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, permanent way. They had learned that hidden conflicts didn't always involve weapons or violence. Sometimes the war was between truth and myth, between people protecting the land and people trying to expose it. Sometimes the conflict was personal, like Liam battling his own need to be the one who knew the most. They stopped at a small diner on the edge of town, the kind with old wooden booths and steaming mugs of coffee that tasted stronger than it should. The owner, a cheerful older woman, welcomed them inside without asking questions. Sam and Mia sat by the window, still processing everything. The sunlight warmed their faces, and for the first time in days they felt safe. The smell of pancakes and fresh coffee filled the air, grounding them in something simple and real. Mia asked what they should do now. Whether they should report anything or tell someone what happened. Sam shook his head. He knew no one would understand, and even if someone listened, it wouldn't help the forest. The caretaker and the woman from the photograph had made it clear, they were protecting something fragile, something ancient. Exposing it would only create noise and unwanted attention. Sam told Mia that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and respect the place you came from. She agreed, sipping her coffee thoughtfully. They talked about the caretaker and the woman, wondering how long they had been guarding the woods and whether they had help. Mia said she hoped they would be okay out there alone. Sam believed they would. People who dedicated their lives to something rarely did it without purpose. The forest trusted them. And that meant something. It meant the balance out there wasn't broken, it was just shaken for a moment. When they finished breakfast, they drove home and took the longest showers of their lives, washing away layers of fear and dirt and sleepless nights. Sam sat on the edge of his bed afterward, the charm resting in his hand again. He studied the symbol, tracing the lines with his thumb. It didn't feel like a threat anymore. It felt like closure. Maybe even gratitude. As strange as it sounded, he was thankful for the experience. It opened his eyes to how much of the world still existed beyond explanations and logic. Some secrets were meant to stay hidden not because they were dangerous, but because they were part of something bigger than people understood. Mia came into the room and sat beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. She asked if he was okay. He nodded and said he was better than okay. He felt present. Awake. Grounded in a way he hadn't felt in years. She smiled, relieved, and said she felt the same. For the first time since the trip began, they felt like themselves again, not scared explorers but regular people who went through something extraordinary. Over the next few days, life slowly returned to normal. Sam went back to work. Mia visited her family. But every now and then, when the wind blew through the trees outside their home or when the night sky grew darker than usual, they felt a quiet pull. A reminder of the mountains. A reminder of the secrets they left behind. Sam didn't ignore it, but he didn't chase it either. He understood the balance now. Curiosity had a limit. Respect did not. One evening, Sam placed the wooden charm on a shelf in their living room. Not hidden, not displayed, just resting where it could exist without pressure. Mia walked by and smiled softly, knowing exactly what it meant. It wasn't fear. It wasn't a warning. It was a symbol of their journey, a reminder that not all mysteries needed solving. Some were meant to be experienced once and carried gently afterward. In time, the Appalachian trip became a story they shared only with each other. Not because they were scared of judgment, but because the truth felt too sacred to reduce into casual conversation. It wasn't just a mystery or an adventure. It was a lesson about trust, balance, and understanding the thin line between what people think they know and what actually exists in the quiet corners of the world. And though Sam never saw Liam again, he hoped his old friend found peace. He hoped Liam realized that real discovery wasn't about being the first or knowing the most, it was about respecting what you uncover. Whether Liam returned with answers or disappeared into his own path, Sam knew their connection would always remain tied to that night in the Appalachian woods. In the end, Sam and Mia weren't heroes or victims. They were witnesses. And sometimes, being a witness to something hidden is more meaningful than being the person who exposes it. The secret war in the Appalachian Mountains wasn't theirs to win or lose. It was theirs to understand, and then quietly step away from. As the weeks passed and life continued, the memory softened, settling into something peaceful. The tension lifted, the fear faded, and what remained was gratitude. They had survived something mysterious and powerful, and they walked away with a deeper respect for the mountains, the stories, and the people who protected them. And just like that, the chapter closed.